Sal Greer had stood at the maitre d' stand of the Amaranth for 17 years, and in all that time he had never once seen Dario Calvetti's hand shake. Not until the night Nico Faraday walked back through the front door, as if no one had ever asked him to leave it. Sal knew the face before he placed the name. 11 years will change a man's hairline and the cut of his coat, but it does not change the way he holds a room, sideways, watching the exits, smiling at no one in particular. Sal had been a junior waiter the year Faraday was pushed out, back when the Amaranth had still smelled of the old life Dario and his partner Teo Marsh had walked away from together. He remembered the silence that followed Faraday out the door. He had never expected to hear footsteps coming back the other way. "Table for one," Faraday said, pleasant as a stranger. "By the window, if it's free." It was free. Sal sat him there and said nothing, and watched him for the rest of the night the way you watch whether you don't trust. The Amaranth ran on certain truths, and the surest of them was this: Dario Calvetti and Teo Marsh did not need words between them. 11 years ago, the two of them had walked out of a harder world hand in hand, bought the old supper club with money that had finally gone clean, and built something that let other men feel safe enough to do business in the open. Dario ran the front of the house and the deals that needed a steady face. Teo ran the numbers and the back rooms and the men who still needed convincing that an honest ledger was worth more than a quick one. Between them, there had never been so much as a raised voice. The staff joked that you could set your watch by the silence in which the two of them agreed on something. That silence was 3 days from being tested. The Amaranth was being sold. Not the building, but a half share of it, to a hotel group that would let Dario and Teo retire the last of the old debts for good. The papers were drawn. The signing was set for Friday night, in the private room upstairs, with both men's names on the line. Lucy Pryor had been hostess at the Amaranth for 9 weeks, and she had learned, in that time, exactly how invisible a good uniform and a quiet voice could make a person. She showed men to tables who never looked at her face. She memorized whose wife was allergic to shellfish and whose son had just started university, and none of them ever asked her name twice. She didn't mind it. She watched everything, and she had found, in 9 weeks, that watching was its own kind of work. She noticed Nico Faraday on his second visit because he tipped the coat check girl with a 50 and asked her, almost idly, which night Mr. Marsh usually came in early. She noticed him on his third visit because he went toward the back hallway, the one marked private, the one that led to Dario's office and the narrow stair down to the wine cellar, and came back out before anyone had seen him go. On the fourth night, clearing a table by the service door, she found a torn corner of stationery in the bin beside it. Cream, heavy stock, with a thin gold rule along the edge. She knew that paper. It was the same stock Dario kept in the top drawer of his own desk, the kind he used for nothing but the rare handwritten note, a thank you, a condolence, the sort of thing a man like Dario Calvetti wrote himself instead of having a secretary do it. A torn corner of Dario's private letterhead. In the bin outside the hallway, only Dario and Teo used. Lucy folded it into her apron pocket and didn't mention it to anyone. Not yet. She wasn't sure what she had. She was sure 4 nights later. She was carrying linens down past the back office when she heard Teo Marsh's voice through the door, low and strange. "Read it again," he was saying, to no one she could hear answering. "Read me the part about the shares again." She didn't stop walking. But that night, long after the dining room had emptied, she went back to the bin by the service door out of nothing but the itch of a thing not finished, and found the photocopier in the record's nook still warm, and a single sheet left behind on the glass. A ledger page, Teo's own handwriting on it, copied and copied again, as though someone wanted 3 of it instead of 1. Lucy was no accountant, but she had grown up doing her mother's books for the laundry on Cole Street, and she knew what a number circled twice in red ink usually meant, and she knew that the number circled here, a transfer dated 11 days before, made out to an account she didn't recognize, did not appear anywhere on the master ledger Teo kept locked in his own drawer. Someone had built a copy of Teo's handwriting around a transaction Teo had never made. She thought of the torn cream stationery in her apron. She thought of Dario's own hand and what a man might do with paper like that, copied close enough to pass. She understood, all at once, standing alone in the record's nook at 11 at night, that someone was building two letters, one in Teo's name, one in Dario's, each one telling its reader that the other man had quietly betrayed him. A forged confession aimed in both directions. Sign on Friday, and by Saturday, there would be no partnership left to honor the deal at all. She had been at the Amaranth 9 weeks. She had no proof that would hold up to anyone who mattered, no standing to walk into the owner's office and accuse a stranger of anything. She had a torn corner of paper and a warm photocopier, and a feeling she could not yet say out loud without sounding like a woman inventing trouble for attention. She went home that night and did not sleep, and in the morning she did the only thing that made sense to her. She went back 4 nights in the reservation book and found that every night Nico Faraday had dined at the Amaranth, he had asked the same coat check girl the same question, which night Teo Marsh came in early, and she wrote it all down, dates and times, in her own plain hand, on a sheet of her own paper, and she went looking for Sal Greer, because in 9 weeks he was the only person at the Amaranth who had ever once asked her how she was actually doing. "You'll think I've lost my mind," she told him. So I had not thought that. Not after the first sentence. He had thought, instead, of a man who tipped too generously and asked too many idle questions, and of the particular quiet that had settled over Dario these past weeks. A man bracing for something he couldn't name. "Show Mr. Calvetti," Sal said. "Tonight, before the signing. He won't see me. I'm a new girl who seats people. He'll see you," Sal said, "or he'll regret it for the rest of his life. And I intend to make sure he knows that's the choice in front of him." Dario Calvetti was a man other men did not interrupt. The whole of the Amaranth ran on the certainty of that, the hush that moved through a room when he crossed it, the way even hard men softened their voices near his table. He had built that stillness out of necessity once, and kept it out of habit, and in 11 years no one on his staff had ever knocked on his office door without being asked first. Lucy knocked anyway, an hour before the signing was due, to begin upstairs. He looked up, surprised more by the knock than by the woman behind it. "Yes, I think someone is trying to end your partnership with Mr. Marsh tonight," Lucy said, "and I think I can show you how." She laid it on his desk without flourish, the torn cream corner, her own dated notes on Faraday's visits, the description of the warm photocopier, and the circled transfer that appeared nowhere in Teo's real ledger. She did not perform fear or apology. She told him plainly, the way she might have told her mother the laundry totals didn't add up, and let the numbers speak for her. Dario read it twice. Sal, standing in the doorway because he had walked her there and found he could not make himself leave, watched something move behind Dario's eyes that he had no name for. Not yet anger, not yet grief, something underneath both. "Where is Teo now?" Dario said. "Upstairs," Sal answered. "Reading something. Alone." Dario was on his feet before the sentence finished. He took the torn paper with him. The private room upstairs held a long table set with 2 copies of the sale agreement and 2 pens and nothing else, because Teo Marsh had sent the staff out 20 minutes before so that he could sit with his own thoughts before his oldest partner arrived. In his hand was a letter on cream stationery with a thin gold rule, in a hand close enough to Dario's own that a man with 11 years of trust behind him might never think to doubt it. It told him, in careful, regretful sentences, that Dario had already arranged to sell his half outright the moment the ink dried, and to do it quietly, and to do it without him. Teo did not look up when the door opened. "Tell me this isn't true," he said, "before I say something I can't take back." "It isn't true," Dario said. "Read what's in my hand instead of what's in yours." He set Lucy's notes and the torn cream corner on the table beside the forged letter, and for a long moment neither man spoke. Then Teo reached into his own coat and drew out a second letter, one Dario had never seen, in his own hand or near enough to it, telling him that Teo had been quietly skimming the deal for months and meant to leave him holding the debt alone. They laid both forgeries side by side under the lamp. The hand was the same on each, careful, patient, built to be believed by exactly one reader at a time. 11 years of trust, and it had taken a stranger only a few weeks and 2 pieces of borrowed stationery to nearly unmake it. Faraday, Teo said quietly. It wasn't a question. It took less than the rest of that night to be certain, and less than a week to be finished with it properly. No scene, no confrontation in the street, nothing the Amaranth's other guests would ever see or hear of. Dario's own lawyers traced the account on the forged ledger entry back through 2 shell transfers to a name that hadn't appeared on any paper connected to the club in 11 years. By the following Friday, Nico Faraday's interest in seeing either partner again, in any capacity, had been settled through channels neither man needed to raise his voice to use. He did not dine at the Amaranth a 5th time. The signing went ahead 2 nights later than planned, with both names on the line exactly as intended. And afterward, Dario and Teo sat at that same long table and said almost nothing to each other, because 11 years of trust does not need many words to repair itself once the lie holding it apart has been cleared away. What they did say, eventually, was each other's names, and then they laughed, briefly and without much humor, at how close it had come. Dario found Lucy on the floor the following evening, seating a party of 4 with the same quiet competence she brought to every table, as though she had not, 3 nights before, walked into his office and handed him back the only thing in his life he could not have bought his way out of losing. "Miss Pryor," he said, and watched her turn and saw. For the first time, he realized in 9 weeks of her working under his own roof that he had genuinely not known the color of her eyes until that moment. "I'd like to speak with you, whenever your shift allows." "Now's fine," she said. He walked her to the wine cellar stair, away from the dining room's noise, and stood there a moment as if he had rehearsed something and lost it. "You had no reason to bring that to me," he said finally. "No standing, nothing to gain. You could have said nothing and kept your job and your evenings quiet." "I could have," Lucy agreed. "I didn't want to be the only one who knew and said nothing. That's a rare instinct. It's not an instinct. It's just decency. Most people have it. Most people just don't get asked to use it." He was quiet at that, the way Sal had seen him be quiet over a deal he was deciding whether to trust. Then he said, "I'd like you managing the front room. Not seating tables, running it. You see things the rest of us walk past." "That's generous," she said, "and I'll take it. But I should tell you I'm not doing this, so you'll owe me anything." "I know that," Dario said. "It's exactly why I'm offering it." He hesitated, an unfamiliar thing in a man whose stillness had never once needed practice. "And if, sometime when you're not on shift, you let me take you to dinner somewhere that isn't this dining room, I'd like that very much. No obligation in it, either way." Lucy considered him for a moment, the same plain, unhurried look she'd given the torn cream paper 4 nights before. "I like that too," she said. Sal Greer watched the 2 of them from the far end of the hallway, where he had no real business standing, and felt something in his own chest settle that he hadn't realized had been unsettled for weeks. Not since the night Faraday walked back through the door, as if he'd never left it. 17 years on that floor, and he had thought he understood exactly what kept a place like the Amaranth standing. Money, nerve, the right kind of silence between the right 2 men. He understood now that it had never been only that. It had been, all along, whoever was paying close enough attention to notice when the silence turned into something dangerous, and brave enough to say so before it was too late to matter. He went back to his stand at the front of the house and straightened his jacket, and when the next party came through the door, he greeted them the way he always had, steady and unhurried, the way a room learns to feel safe.